Dr. Pramesh, Dr. Sareen, Dr. Gupta, Dr. Seema Gulia, other co-organizing secretaries, and all very distinguished people who are in this ongoing big struggle to fight cancer. A challenge which it seems is growing by the day. Uh, and so one can't even imagine, let's say, if Tata Memorial Center was not there, what would have happened to the fight of the cancer? I would also like to thank the organizers, the Women's Cancer Initiative, uh, and the organizers of this annual conference for what I would consider very distinctive honor to be able to deliver Dr. Dinsha oration, Dr. Kitayan Dinsha oration. And when I got this letter first, I was about to say no, simply because I thought this is not my cup of tea. But then I saw name of Dr. Dinsha there, and seeing that name, there was no way I could say no. So I knew that I'm indulging in an exercise which will become a great distraction for all of you in the midst of this very important cancer conference where you are addressing various issues related to women's cancer. But I think what I'm going to speak is something, though not connected with medicine so much, but it was, I think, uh, very deeply connected with what Dr. Dinsha stood for, and what uh, uh, is something which is dear to me even now. So pardon me for uh, distracting you in the middle of your very important conference. Talking about Dr. Dinsha, she she was, of course, the director of Tata Memorial Center and, of course, Tata Memorial Hospital for a very long time. But 8 years out of that duration was something where I worked with her, because in my capacity as the chairman of Atomic Energy Commission, you automatically become the chairman of the governing council of the Tata Memorial Center. And of course, that was the reason for fairly intense interaction with Dr. Dinsha. And she came across as a very distinctive person, very unique person. They say that the, the people who deliver, people who matter, people who are important, there are some few unique characteristics of those people. First is, these people have a vision of their own. Second is, these people have courage to take that vision forward. Third is, they just not have courage, but they know how to carry that vision forward, and they have the ability and all the time to devote time in terms of attention to details. And if I can add one more, I think she had tremendous aesthetic sense. And now, of course, I don't have to tell you, many of you who might have interacted with her Uh, she was a lady full of compassion, but sometimes when you talk to her, she would appear as if an iron lady. And I have seen her in both her, can I use the term, avatars? And so very remarkable person. And of course, running an institution like Tata Memorial Center is uh, is not a simple thing. And of course, you are sitting here, so I don't have to carry the coal to Newcastle. But I would like to narrate a few anecdotes before I begin the main subject matter of what I'm going to speak. First one was an ethics issue. And for all of you, it may be very simple, straightforward thing. But actually, she came to me asking my advice as if I'm somebody who can give her advice. But the issue of ethics was that uh, terminally ill patients, when it's known that the chance of survival for more than some days or weeks is very, very slim. And then, of course, you have a huge OPD department. And then there are people who keep on moving around. So there are, pardon me if there are some medical representatives here, no offense meant to anybody. But the point that was made was that they would always contact the relatives of the patients and tell them that, look, now there is a new medicine, very effective palliative, and certainly the life will get extended by 6 months or 1 year. And then the relatives will go to the doctor, whosoever is treating, and say, no, this has come, and why don't you try this? Now the challenge is for an individual doctor, and this is how she narrated to me. For an individual doctor, it's a big decision. Professionally, you know that it's literally waste of money. But then there is family, their emotions, hope against hope. And whether it's a good thing to straight away outright deny such a thing. And why the burden of that decision should be on the single person. And then I think afterwards, a mechanism was evolved and things are going on. And I'm sure it must have evolved, and I don't know what level of transformation we are seeing that. But the point to me is, it was not necessary for her to talk this to me, a non-professional. But she just wanted to make sure that that issue is addressed, and addressed in a manner where you are fair to the patient, but you are also fair to the doctors. So this is the compassion part of it. Now I want to narrate an episode, which is the courageous person, Dr. Dinshaw, the courageous lady. And this was at a time when I think lot of your infrastructure was under repair and maintenance. I think your operation theaters were not available. And so obviously many surgeons were, you can't be, sitting idle doing nothing. So that it was all agreed that they should continue practice in other hospitals. And then I think after 6 months, everything was in place. And so the question was to ask everybody that now you must spend full time here. And I'm sure some of you may be aware of that. And there was a huge storm here. Eminent physicians, surgeons, doctors on one side, wanting their freedom, wanting their view as a gospel truth. And here was Dr. Dinsha, head of the institution, wanting to make sure that everybody is available in the hospital for the time it is required. And so she came to me and said, "Look, I'm going to insist. I'm going the words were used that I'm in those days." Attendance marking, electronic systems were not there. There used to be those punch card systems. So I'm going to insist on everybody punching cards. And so you will get a lot of complaints. So I want to ask you whether you will support me or not before I implement it. And I said, I'll of course support. And then she says, no, you will also get complaints from Delhi ministers, politicians. I said, don't worry about that. And but I think she kept it to herself for some time. During that time, we both happened to be in Vienna, and there are also doctors from many eminent hospitals in other countries, United States and all. And of course, some of them were her close friends, colleagues, and also in similar positions. She was a director of this place. There were directors from other. So she said, no, you don't say that you will support, but I want you to know what are the practices in other hospitals. So we had a discussion. And the consensus there, all of them said, and they actually narrated actual instances in those hospitals. But the consensus was that it is the eminent institution which makes eminent people. And eminent people, howsoever eminent they are, they must put institution ahead of them. And if that is not the case, institution should identify younger people and bring them forth. And there should be no doubt that they will become eminent in a few years to follow. And that is precisely what we did. And I don't want to comment anything further on this. But the way she said, of course, I had calls from a lot of eminent medical doctors, not just from within Tata Memorial Center, but across Bombay City, in Delhi, and several ministers in Delhi. And anyway, that's a separate story. But I thought I must narrate this here, that at that time, there are many people who actually threatened that TMC will go down the drain. And you know what TMC is today. So that's the courageous lady part of Dr. Dinsha. So I thought I must narrate these two here. I, of course, had occasion to travel with Dr. Dinsha, not just to Vienna or foreign countries, but also to interior of India. I had gone with her to Barshi. I had gone with her to Derwent. And in fact, in one of the, and that's how I got connected with Derwent Hospital, which I continue even now. But on one occasion, Derwent Tata Memorial Center had I think a project to look at collect data epidemiology in that area. And so in one of the engagement with local people, some of the local, and this must be year 2000, 2002, 2003, somewhere of that time. So that was more than roughly 50 years after independence. And one of them, some of the people who have been identified with cancer problem, they are all there to narrate their experiences. And for him, that Tata Memorial Center had carried out this survey activity, looking at them, providing treatment to them. All that, of course, was fine. But what one of them said, is when these people, your enumerators, came to me or came to their uh, village or uh, the house. That was the first time ever anything of government was seen by them in their village. Because one of your project jeep and some of your enumerators went there to collect. And it says it's the first time. So for 50 years, we didn't know that there is a government, but now we know there is a government. And that was creation of Dr. Dinsha. So I thought I'll mention that here. All right. uh, Now, what I'm going to talk to you is something quite different, as I said, but it is about building or capacity building of humans in India. And, India is, of course, there is economic growth, uh, and there is that feel good factor. But we must be conscious of the fact that there is a much larger part of the country which, uh, some earlier on somebody used this word disparity. And disparity is a big challenge. It's a challenge not just in India, but all over the world. Even in the affluent countries of the world, disparity is a challenge. And so of late, it appears to me that uh, uh, when you talk about development, you talk about schooling, you talk about hospitals, you talk about roads, you talk about drinking water. All these things are, of course, important. But I would say these are only brick and mortar development. Real development will come when you talk about development of human beings. And that is what I'm going to talk to you. And I'm sure uh, if Dr. Dinsha were here, she would have certainly liked to hear. But so the point that we need to recognize that, these bars are actually, the color bands are the share of GDP of a country, and each color signifies a country, and there is a catalog at the top. And the pink band is the GDP of India relative to the country. And you would see that year 1 to 1000 to maybe year 1700, the India's GDP was about the largest among all countries of the world. And recognize that that also is the time which is coincident with agrarian era, and that's around the time the industrial era came into existence. And of course, as far as India is concerned, we were under foreign rule and exploitation and all. There are many other reasons, but the fact is, from that time onwards, relative GDP of our country started shrinking. And you could notice that 70 and 2008, again, there is a significant reversal, although it is very small. And today, we know that we are now fifth largest economy in real value and third largest economy in dollar purchase parity term the world over. Now, having said that, so India is making economic progress. But if you compare, because after all, the quality of life development, you cannot measure just in total GDP. If you're looking at the quality of life of individuals, the real parameter would be GDP per capita. And GDP per capita, depending on which data set you are looking at, we are at 128th or 160th place. So to me, I will be happy if India is at the third place or fifth place or tomorrow even in the first place in GDP per capita term, and not so much on total GDP. Total GDP because we're a large population. So I think it's no brainer that with such large uh, uh, demographic dividend, large youth force, and everybody doing something, economy will be always greater. So India economy increasing and increasing rapidly doesn't enthuse me, to tell you very frankly. So that is the challenge that we should look at. And this disparity issue is you can see that in every parameter. Now, before I come to that, let me say that we must also recognize that India has made huge progress. Most important thing is the largest democracy which has taken roots. And if you look at many other countries which became independent around the time India became independent, India is a shining example. Not many countries could sustain that. So that's a huge, big achievement. In terms of population, I won't call it an achievement, but the fact is that we are the second largest, and maybe within a year or two, we will be the largest population, large market, one of the largest economy as we talked, and geopolitically a very important country. We are all seeing signatures of that happening. In terms of other economic production, among the top in terms of agriculture, horticulture, other production items like electricity, steel, coal, road network, railway, everything is big in this country. But having said that, the income share, 10% of the total income is amassed within top 0.1%. Or for that matter, 22% of the total income share is amassed or concentrated in top 1%. Now, one may feel that, the rural areas, which are kind of, rural areas have roughly half the average per capita income compared to urban areas. So there is that urban-rural divide. And so one may feel that this problem is an urban problem. If you look at the Gini index, it's actually higher in rural area, meaning disparity is higher in rural areas than in urban areas, although the poverty is higher in rural areas. So that's a kind of paradox that we need to understand. Since I'm with the medical fraternity, India boasts of medical tourism, fantastic facilities. A lot of people from abroad come here for treatment. So we have state of art. We are literally number one in many areas in terms of technology, understanding, research. We have institutions like Tata Memorial Hospital Center and things like that. But when you look at the ranking on healthcare among the countries, we suddenly go down to 150th place. And that is the challenge that we need to address. So why that happens? When we are making so much of progress, but at the same time, we have these challenges. And as I said earlier, the answer to that lies in terms of way we are grooming ourselves, the way humans are grooming humans. India has been a very mature, very deep civilization. We have brought a lot of values to the world, and the world respects India for that. But the fact remains that all of us, being a part of the quote-unquote animal kingdom, while efforts have been made in India and other civilizations of the world to develop human instincts, human values, how do we live as a society of human beings? But the fact remains we are animals after all, and we have animal instinct in all of us. And the question is this balance between the animal instinct in us and the human instinct in us. So inculcating human values through mentoring and practice is the most important. You don't inculcate values by reading some books or listening to some discourse. That's okay. I listen to some discourse and like here I can re-narrate that. Doesn't mean that I have become a good human being. That has to be inculcated through mentoring and practice. And that's the key to sustainable welfare societies, even as knowledge becomes the force multiplier for human capability. We're becoming stronger and stronger because of our more evolved brain. We can leverage knowledge to gain power. And then, of course, once you gain power, you have power to exploit. So depending on your makeup, you become an exploiter or you become a supporter of the humane society. So sustainable societies, they must assure, the famous Maslow pyramid, that basic human needs, identity, prosperity, and security for everybody while respecting diversity. You have to respect diversity. You can't say that everybody will be alike. That doesn't happen. And I think it's not a good thing for that to happen. But there must be that minimum concern. And so it reminds me of a famous quote by H.G. Wells: civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And I leave it to you to decide whether we are heading towards a catastrophe or heading towards very intelligent. Of course, we are heading towards very intelligent human beings, but are we heading towards a great society? So it is in that context that I want to very briefly talk about this subject. Now, what are the opportunities? India at 75 painted a broad brush picture in an earlier slide. But I think we have plenty of opportunity. The largest opportunity to remove discordance between wealth creation and equity in opportunities, that's the problem. And that lies everywhere. But to me, it looks like that the largest opportunity is in rural areas. Just like there is a rich-poor divide, there is a digital divide, there is an economic divide, and there is an urban-rural divide. But in terms of looking at number of people, if you take care of urban-rural divide, you are addressing a very large segment of this problem. And I think in the knowledge era that we are in, this is now possible. Agrarian era essentially promoted rural habitat. You have fields for doing agriculture, you have a house there, and that's how villages grew. I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but an important reason. Then you have factories, and then that requires large workforce. The Bombay Girangao actually grew like that, representative of an industrial era. The knowledge era actually does not distinguish either. It can, all these knowledge technologies, they actually promote decentralization and democratization. And so in the rural areas, you can make as much economic progress, you can create as much economic opportunity as possibly you can do in urban areas, leveraging the knowledge technologies or leveraging the opportunities of knowledge era. And that's where the opportunity lies, and we must. So I these days promote a concept called sillage, city in a village. best of city in a village, a digital city in a modern village, or if you expand it even further, knowledge-based ecosystem for integrated education, research, technology development and deployment, as well as livelihood and capacity building in rural areas. Now, talking about diversity, this is, sometime back, I was connected with TIFAC and we did a Technology Vision 2035 document. Now, when we're looking at what is it, when we say we are looking at India, what is it that we are looking at? Then we figured out that we are talking about a great diversity of different kinds, but in the context of human capacity building, we are talking about very creative, innovative people. Many times they are singularities, but very important people. We are looking at people who feel left out of stream, but we have to address their needs. We are looking at people who are globalized. They sit in India, talk about America. They sit in America, talk about India. But they are Indians, so we have to look at them. We're talking about there are people who are rooted. It doesn't matter about modernity, and I want to live the way I was living, or way my parents were living, or way my grandfathers. There are rooted people, rooted in civilization in their own way. And of course, the largest fraction is the beehives and the professional world, who actually drive the wheels of economy. Now, whenever we decide a development program, I think we need to look at all of them, and of course, more importantly, in the rural context. So, key to me is that you have a framework where all of them put together can contribute, because they all bring in different strengths. And if you can bring that into our knowledge system, if you can bring technologies, if you can bring culture, if you can bring human values, all into our knowledge system and actual implementation. So, and that's what is university is to me. So if you link university or college in a local place to engage with local community, not that I teach somebody in a school or a college up to higher secondary or BA, BSc, and then he looks for going to city because higher education is only available in city. That actually takes you nowhere, according to me. But if these institutions are engaged in term, and there is a huge learning, the so-called situated learning. So if you do that, then you can create self-sustaining technology. They may not be great technologies coming from the West, but they will be most appropriate technologies brought in through this local innovation. And you create this local technology development centers, create linkages, backward, forward linkages for them. I think it will make a huge, big economic transformation. So the integrated rural development, it tantamounts to actually building sustainable and competitive human capability. In that process, the knowledge era would equally favor, as I said, rural as well as urban habitat. There is a need to be able to leapfrog and acquire capabilities consistent with emerging knowledge era. Our young people in cities are able to do that because they have facilities. Young people in villages find it very hard to do that. Can we create those facilities, even if it costs much more, even if it creates a lot of, you want to set up an institution, you appoint a siting committee, 10 out of 10 people will say, no, you locate it in a city, you locate it near the airport, you locate it where there are jobs for spouses. Very important points. But what misses is it actually creates disparity. The villages remain remote. The point is, supposing you spend 50% more money to compensate for all this and do capacity building of rural areas, I think it will pay back much more in a very short time. And that is what is the important thing to recognize. So, we talk about this term ecosystem. We talk about innovation ecosystem. Tata Memorial Center is a great ecosystem because you have research, you have education, you have service, and you are all connected. There are civil society, NGOs. And I think Tata Center is so important, so big, so successful because of that ecosystem. There was, one of the feature of, and it's there in your website, that your approach is an integrative approach. Now, when we are talking about rural domain, why can't we take that integrative approach? Why is it that, some minimum thing you do here, otherwise go to city? That doesn't help the society. That actually adds to the disparities. I'll skip that. This is so we said we should make some efforts. No point in simply talking about this. So at a place near Pandharpur, it's a little away, there is an engineering college, private engineering college. And they came forward along with BARC. And so they said, okay, let us engage with the rural neighborhood. So they created a demonstration center where the technologies which can contribute to their livelihoods could be, the rural people, local people can be exposed, they can be trained, and then we can start some livelihood activities. Along with that, let us bring in the modern education technology. The National Knowledge Network is available only for elite institutions. We said, no, we want one node right there. And from there, some colleague in Chennai, but he was originally a TIFR person. So he said, okay, I will give you, Wi-Fi we all know, but we asked him whether you can give a Wi-Fi which will reach out to maybe 20 kilometers. So he designed a low-cost system. So this engineering college, from there, one could go to another school in village, which may be 20, 25 kilometers away. And what you see, some of these, they are accessing data on internet live. And people from IITs, people from NKN, they're all supporting in this endeavor. And within days, these students, they learned how to work on tablets, and in fact, their rate of learning was faster than the rate of learning of their teachers. And these are some of the important things which can make a big transformation. So you can take an integrated approach to education, to skilling. Then we thought, let's do something bigger. So that was the time when Gondwana University was formed at Gadchiroli. It was carved out of Nagpur University. And Gadchiroli, as you know, is one of the most forested area of the state, maybe of the country. Of course, Northeast, it's another thing. So there the university has set up a science technology resource center. And there again, there is on one side, there is the skilling activity for local people. But at the same time, the university now starts a diploma program on bamboo entrepreneurship. Bamboo is a huge resource there. But unfortunately, the engineering college students in Gadchiroli or Chandrapur, they are taught the same civil engineering that was taught to me in VGTI in Mumbai. So Gadchiroli engineer, he will know how to make a house out of concrete, But if you ask him, why can't we make a house out of bamboo? He will not know. So now they are saying that, okay, let us start that program. So the university is taking initiative. So it is this connectedness that is important, and that is the point which I am trying to drive at. And then, of course, we have taken this to yet another level where in Nandurbar, no, this slide is something different, but next to Gadchiroli at Nandurbar, we said, okay, let us do this at the level of a block. So Nandurbar is as backward in terms of Human Development Index. Nandurbar, the tribal areas of Nandurbar are actually somewhat at a more disadvantage compared to the tribals in Gadchiroli. Their HDI is a bit low. So there are hilly areas, there are plain areas where tribals live. And so we said that let's look at it at the level of a block. And can we do this exercise of integrating knowledge, R&D, technology, livelihood, the financial inclusion, and so on. So that is being hosted by North Maharashtra University, which is headquartered in Jalgaon. But they have a tribal academy at Nandurbar, and this has just begun up. I think it's only year and a half old. So the point I'm making it, this is an experiment which is going on. And I'm sure some of you who are connected with the old Barshi exercise or old Derwan exercise, you would recognize that this is exactly what you have been doing here. Now, let's do fast forward. So this table is actually a survey from several countries, and people there, they're all concerned, and I'm sure all of you are also concerned about the broad range of potential negative impacts of mobile phone use. One of the signature of, it's such a powerful tool, such an important tool. We can't conduct ourselves because such a big help. But there is a flip side to that. And to me, for example, there are such large numbers of people saying that children are being exposed to immoral and harmful content. And the survey indicates, the replies from people 94% to 55%. A very large number, they say that is what is happening. But more worrisome to me, and there are many other impacts, and I'm not going to sort of deal with, that's not what my intention. My intention is to highlight the problem of technology. Many times we feel, technology gives you power, technology brings you wealth. But unless you train the human mind correctly, because all technologies have a bad side and a good side, you must train the human mind in the right way to make sure that humanity benefits from the right side and we keep the bad effects away. And in that context, if you look at the last column, losing the ability to communicate face to face. And in terms of relative number compared to other, this may be low, but that number is around 50%. So it's not all that low. And the other day I was in some community of educators. So they say during pandemic, the children, of course, we take pride in saying that we have made online education available to them. So a survey was done in terms of attention span of children. And the attention span, I don't know, but I was very, very surprised to hear the attention span of children is less than a minute. They can't concentrate. Old days we used to say, those tables you by heart, and the scriptures you by heart, and there used to be competitions of doing that. Thank you. But impossible now to their attention span, and it was already less than a minute. Post-pandemic, it has become half of that. So you can imagine the challenge in terms of human development that we face. Anyway, uh, in a lighter vein, I like this cartoon, so I put it here because this technology or the mindset, it impacts our values, human value system. It's in Marathi, but I'll read it in Marathi and then translate because it's important. So this poor farmer who is trying to sell his fruits and vegetable, he tells his customer, because he's always say, "Ye bahut mehanga hai." So he's telling them that when the gold prices go up, you say "Jhadali," it shines. Gold is shining. Share market, when it goes up, they say share market has jumped up. But when agricultural produce goes up, you say that is inflation. Mehengai badh gayi. Ye kya nyaya hai? So I think it's a telling story about the way we are looking at things. And I think we need to do something about it. So the important thing to me is strengthening human values to eliminate exploitation. As I told you, we are all animals. So unless what our forefathers have been doing in terms of inculcating values, otherwise what's happening in the West, what's happening everywhere. So, everybody would just want to be ahead of the next fellow. What happens to your next fellow, you don't care. So, or I have learned something, so let me exploit. So where are those human values? So I think we need to emphasize, whether we are doing medicine, engineering, technology, whatever. But I think we must emphasize holistic liberal education in tune with individual student interest for all. And I must say, I think I must be minority of one, an engineer, but all of you doctors, you do much better on this count than engineers. So we are much more hard-headed. Adoption of appropriate technologies and deployment strategies. Again, there we must do it in a manner which will bridge the divides, create universal access to knowledge, holistic learning environment, principles of compensation based on human justice, and not just market principles of demand and supply. It's a very, demand supply, so it will happen. The question is, I think time has come to challenge those principles. Are they fair? Are they, in fact, somebody asked me a question, all agriculture thrives because of pollination. Pollination is at its best when the air quality is at its best. Now, who pays for pollination service? If you talk in commercial terms, supply of inputs, irrigation, fertilizer, insecticides, all these are inputs. So pollination service is not an input. Without pollination, where is your agriculture? Who pays for it? And of course, you can go on same thing for air quality, water quality. So I think there must be, in so-called, rather than just supply demand. See, today what is happening is, in terms of the price increase, right from whatever you do in the farm to the market, the cost of money contributes to maximum price increase. And everything else is insignificant. Is that fair? And so I think we need to, people have to think about it. I think we need a complete restructuring of the way we do our things. And then there is other issue about sustainability. Because today we are all ending towards the cliff edges, posing survival risks. And what happened during pandemic, the distress migration, even at the cost of lives of people, is actually that we have driven society to the cliff edge. And it need not have been like that. So, and then of course, sustainability, there is an issue because resources are finite. Consumptive society leads to a lot of waste. There is an issue of waste management. And so we are talking about 3R strategy. We're also talking about circular economy. Nature has organized itself in a circular economy. There is nothing, no waste in nature. So why can't man-made activities be of that kind? We are copying everything in nature. So ecological sustainability, respect for environment and the services it provides, all that has to be factored in the way we take things ahead. Now it is in that context, we do a lot of R&D. Here is a data, I don't want to spend too much of time on that, but each circle represents the expenditure of countries on research and development. And the center of that circle, where it is located on this graph, that graph is on the y-axis, the number of scientists and engineers per million population. And on the x-axis, the money that country spends as a percentage of GDP, the famous 2% that we talk about. And India is, I don't know that it will show here. No, it doesn't matter. But India is, there is that pointer going to that yellow circle. That's where India is. So very low in terms of R&D as a percentage, or R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP. And of course, we're a large country, large scientific pool, but very low as a percentage of our population. Even so, that circle that represents India is not very small. In fact, Indian R&D expenditure is larger than countries like Israel, Canada, Sweden, UK, Switzerland, Finland. So we spend more money on R&D than these countries. Now you ask for yourself, we import more technologies from them or we export more technologies to them? If we are spending more money on R&D, we should be a net exporter. And the question is why we are not. Somebody said, no, but then, we're too many people, our resources get thin. But per full-time equivalent spending in India is comparable to best countries. Not many people realize. At one stage, in fact, I read a paper, it was a survey of some 28 countries, and salary of Indian faculty, I'm talking about university teachers, compared in dollar purchase parity terms, is fourth best in the world, ahead of United States. All of you may be surprised, but at least in that particular year, that was a fact. So the question is, we are a poor country, we should get more resources, all that is true. But the question is our output commensurate with the inputs that we get? And again, that's a value system problem that we need to address. I'll not go into this, but essentially to say that the knowledge intensity in teaching and learning and the value creation potential, they go hand in hand. And many times the knowledge intensity in our learning systems is actually very low. It's just copy. I did that, I taught that, I learned something, passed out, became a professor. And I'm not talking about the better institutions. India has many better institutions, but there are many more, which is what I'm describing. And so there is very little value creation that goes on. And I think we need to change all that. And I don't have to mention this here, but when I give lectures in other research and academic institutions, I simply say that look at Stanford, the alumni and the startups and all which have been created over periods. So they have something like 40,000 companies over a period of time. They have created 5.4 million jobs. And the revenue generated out of these enterprises is $2.7 dollars, US dollars, 2.7 trillion annual revenue. And notice that this one single university, this contribution is comparable to India's GDP. Now, how many universities do we have in India? So that is the point I was making earlier. I'll skip this. This is just to say what we need to do to transform universities. But the important thing is the value system. I will be coming back and again. So I have taken this example of transportation. On the right-hand side, you have the bullet train. On the left-hand side, you have a maglev, magnetically levitated train. And let us say that we have now challenge. India, we have to develop both. A bullet train can perhaps be developed in a place where railway technology development is at work. Maglev, on the other hand, these people will not be able to develop because they know nothing about electromagnetics. They only know the traction and rotation and wheels and gears and things like that. On the other hand, if there is a research institution more dedicated to fundamental research, and there is a big group on electromagnetics, maybe somebody there will come up with an idea as to how to build a maglev. Now, our research institutions, they will say, no, that is hard technology that will distract me from my research. How do you create values? Now, if you want to promote that, then if I had to find out the contribution of researchers, one standard method is you count the papers. And again, not Tata Memorial Center, but many places promotion is done by counting papers like you count notes. Now, that doesn't take you any far. But if you say that, well, I have produced 10 papers, and then you ask how many people read it, forget about translating whatever is the finding into some further value. So the question is, you must recognize outputs in different buckets. Publications is one, but how that publication has contributed to somebody else who would take the value creation forward. I can do it myself or somebody else can do it. How that value creation has been supported in the ecosystem in that area. And I think all that must be recognized. I think you have that ecosystem here. I think you, I don't know, but at least what I heard is that you have some kind of a waiting system for research and service and patient care, and I hope it is there. So, but most of the institution is not there. And unless that is brought in, how can people think of creating value? Because ultimately people are driven by what people recognize. So I've come to the end now. So I want to come back and narrate an experience, not an experience, but something connected with Valavalkar Medical College, where in fact I had gone, first time I had gone with Dr. Dinshaw. Now, I'm telling you all this silage and all. So Dr. Suvarna Patil, the medical director of that place, she knows because I'm connected there. I talk about livelihood, technology, all these things I talk about, even though that's a hospital and a medical college. So she wrote me a mail saying, I witness decline in migration of rural population. And she's comparing Savarde, that's the village where they are located, and Chiplon, which is the next city. When you go to Derwan, you get down at Chiplon and then drive for maybe 1 hour or half an hour or something like that. So she says that migration of rural population during pandemic time, she witnessed decline in migration, and in fact many urbanites have relocated themselves in villages. That we all heard. They have settled with their jobs here in Derwan. Earn and learn scheme of our institute. That's a medical college, has taken leap after making technical education available to rural youth. And earlier on, she says the economy of Savarde village, where they are located, has risen to 3 crores a month since last few years, and that is much more than economy of Chiplun. So when you talk about human development, that is what happens, and that is what we should all aim at. Which is the major city nearby, the people have started relocating to Savarde and demand for land has increased tremendously. And that's the observation. So she concludes that after making technical education available to rural youth, and in true sense, Derwan and surrounding is excellent. So I felt mighty happy, and I thought I must quote it to you here. Thank you.